In just a matter of hours, an estimated 50,000 people rushed the border of a tiny Spanish territory. The crossing was deadly. Dozens of people drowned after spending up to 4 hours navigating the turbulent waters in a desperate attempt to reach land. Churning oceans slams into heavily fortified rock along this stretch of coast, making any approach by water inherently dangerous. This is Ceuta. It sits directly on the coast of North Africa, surrounded by Morocco, but it is sovereign Spanish soil. If you step foot here, you are legally in Europe. It jets right out into the sea, creating a tiny geographic choke point for migration. Because of that geography, the border is severely restricted. High fences and thick concertina wire line the perimeter to block anyone crossing by land. When the massive crowds arrived, local officials were completely overwhelmed. Border guards couldn't hold the line. The government had to deploy military troops, and leaders on the ground demanded a state of emergency. But those land fences didn't matter, because the vast majority of those 50,000 people didn't try to climb them. They bypassed the wire entirely and came in by sea. While Ceuta has long been a target for migrants, the sheer speed and volume of this arrival suggests something shifted far beyond the border fence. That shift actually started earlier in the month, right here at the Spanish Supreme Court. The court handed down a ruling on migration. It stated that authorities are legally prohibited from immediately returning people who cross into Spain by sea. Instead, the government must provide them with individual due process. The goal of the ruling was straightforward: to uphold international law, protect human rights, and guarantee that asylum seekers get a fair individual hearing. But human smuggling rings took that nuanced document and distorted it. They fed migrants a false equation. If you arrive by water, you get automatic asylum in Spain. That lie spread rapidly. People were told the ocean was a guaranteed backdoor into Europe. Believing that immediate acceptance was waiting for them, tens of thousands of people threw themselves into the water, risking their lives for a promise that wasn't real. A court ruling, explicitly designed to protect vulnerable people, was twisted into a deadly piece of propaganda that ultimately got dozens killed. Back on the beaches of Ceuta, Spanish military and police were left to deal with the fallout, pulling exhausted people out of the surf. Because the Supreme Court ruling is the law of the land, authorities couldn't turn them away at the shoreline. They were legally obligated to take them in.
The city had to scramble to construct makeshift reception facilities overnight, creating massive bottlenecks as officers tried to process tens of thousands of individual assessments. International human rights groups were watching the response closely, ensuring Spain didn't resort to unlawful collective expulsions in the chaos. The volume was so extreme that the Spanish government had to quickly open emergency communications with Morocco to coordinate the safe, voluntary return of about 25,000 people. Spain was trapped. They were physically incapable of housing that many people, yet legally and ethically required to try. The pressure from this single bottleneck didn't stay contained to Ceuta. Because it is a Spanish territory, a breach there is legally a breach into the rest of Europe. Neighboring countries immediately reacted. France's interior minister announced they were rapidly stepping up security along their own shared border with Spain. Italy pushed back even harder. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni openly threatened to take, in her words, extraordinary measures against the Spanish government. Her threat targeted the Schengen zone, Europe's system of open, visa-free travel. Meloni suggested excluding Spain from that zone entirely if they couldn't control the flow of arrivals. Cutting Spain out of the open border agreement would devastate its economy, choke trade routes, and politically isolate Madrid from its closest allies. That level of geopolitical panic rippled across the continent, all triggered by a single stretch of coastline in North Africa. What happened in Ceuta shows how quickly a local policy can spiral. A domestic court ruling, misunderstood by desperate people, was enough to overwhelm a city, cost dozens of lives, and push the borders of Europe toward a fracture.